Next, we will have Assembly Member Chu. What is he here? Wait for him. Yes, Assembly Member.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Senators. I appreciate your consideration of AB 438, which would require our state's workers' compensation system to comply with our state's language access law to provide services in the languages of all of the folks that we are supposed to be serving. Every year, there are 500,000 work-related injuries that occur. And we know that our workers' comp system is difficult to navigate even if you are a native English speaker. And we know that any worker who has a serious loss of income or permanent disability due to a work injury should be able to access this system in their first language. This is critical in a state that has the largest limited English proficient population in the country, nearly 20% of our state's population, almost 7 million residents. In the early 1970s, our legislature passed the Daimele Alatori Act, which required agencies to provide information in relevant languages if a substantial number of the public served by the agency is not English speaking. However, that law has been unclear as to whether the Division of Workers' Compensation within DIR, the Department of Industrial Relations, is required to comply with Daimele Alatori, and the department has not even been fully compliant with regards to Spanish. In comparison, the Division of Labor Standards Enforcement, which is also within DIR, complies with the Daimele Alatori Act with regards to Spanish, Tagalog, Chinese, Vietnamese, and Korean. We've heard from organizations on the ground representing limited English-speaking clients, particularly APIs, who don't know about their workers' comp rights and have had difficulties accessing benefits. And we know that this is potentially locking out tens of thousands of Californians from our workers' comp system. AB 438 would provide much-needed access to services for all Californians, and with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, and witnesses support.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mike Carroll with the California Applicant Attorneys. We are the sponsor of this measure. We have noticed for many years now that people who come into our offices all over the state of California are monolingual in languages in which they get forms, though, only in English. They don't understand the forms that they've been sent. Many of these forms have time limits on them by which people must respond or lose potentially the ability to file a claim or access significant benefits within the workers' compensation system. So we brought forth this measure to Mr. Chu, because we think it's time for the division and the Department of Industrial Relations to fully comply with Daimele Alatori, as so many other state agencies do. It is time for this to happen, and we strongly support this measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Jason Schmelzer on behalf of the California Coalition on Workers' Compensation. We actually don't have a position on the bill at this point, but we're working with the author's office just to clarify that this does only apply to the department and the division and not the notices that are sent out by employers, although that's an issue we'd be happy to work with them on. This is actually important from two perspectives. One has already been stated clearly, but from an employer perspective, and Mr. Leno is an employer, Mr. Stone is an employer, you'll understand this. One of the most important aspects in litigation avoidance, making sure that people are getting along in the workers' compensation system. Are you an employer too? Did I not know that?
But I'm
sorry.
See if I can figure out like those two can.
I'm in trouble. Sorry. Ouch. I might stand up, go back, and sit down and try again. All right. That might be a good idea. But from an employer perspective, you really want to make sure that everybody is completely understanding what's going on in the system. Every injured worker understands what's in front of them, what the process is to avoid litigation and make it a less expensive, less onerous system. So thank you. And I apologize.
Thank you.
It was just outing.
Okay, any others in support?
The Teamsters in support of the bill. Thank you.
Dennis Garcia on behalf of Voters Injured at Work in support.
Good morning, Steve Catolica, representing the California Society of Industrial Medicine and Surgery, the California Neurology Society, and the California Society of Physical Medicine and Rehab in support.
Thank you.
Gina De Silva with the California Immigrant Policy Center in support.
Thank you. Any others in support? Seeing none. Any opposition? Please step forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senators, Julianne Broyles here on behalf of the California Association of Joint Powers Authorities. We're rather in a tweener place on this bill. We've been trying to work diligently with the author, his staff, and with the sponsor to find a solution on this bill because we do believe in the policy that you're trying to reach in terms of making sure that the forms and bulletins and postings required by the Division of Workers' Compensation meet Daimler Allotory. We have provided amendments to the author. I know that they're still under consideration. We thought that the analysis made a very good discussion of what the issues are. What we're trying to make sure is that we know where the line divides in terms of forms that we send out from our own claim operations. Our claim operations customize some forms to explain the issues involved, why a claim is being continued, why it might be stopped, why benefits might be changed, and we're concerned right now over the possible penalties we might take on underneath the audit requirements of the Division of Workers' Compensation that we might be subject to if we do it wrong. So we're trying to find a path through to where we can remove all of our concerns and be able to support the bill. So that's where we are today.
Mr. Chair, members, Jeremy Merz on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce. We too have no position on the bill. We had some concerns, but starting in January, we've had discussion with the author's office, and so far they've been addressed. I know we're working on, as Ms. Broyles and Mr. Schmelzer illuminated, a few lasting issues, but again, we support the policy, understand where it's driving at, and once we get those clarifications, we'll be completely off the bill.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions from members? Oh, Vice Chair Stoll.
No, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with the spirit of your bill, sir, and making sure that people understand the process. And it sounds like you've been working with the opposition all along. I applaud you for that, and I think you'll continue. And in the spirit of making sure that we get the end product that we want, which is to make sure that people understand what they read, depending on the various language. I think we have 52 languages or more in LA County alone. It's very important that they have that ability to understand. So I'm going to move your bill.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yay. Thank you, Vice Chair. You do have a motion already. Any other comments or questions?
Yes.
Yes, Senator Dunn.
Do you have response to the 3 points of concern that were raised in the analysis?
Absolutely. So the first point of concern was whether employers would be required to comply with this. And the intent of what we're trying to do is really to ask the department to provide information in different languages. The staff analysis states that the plain reading of the bill says it's the departments that have to comply and not the employers, but we're in discussions with employers and the administration and happy to consider language to clarify that, either an intent language, alternative language, or the letter to the journal. With regards to the suggested phase-in, I appreciate the desire for the department to have a couple more years to do this. Let me say a few things. First of all, the Department of Industrial Relations was able to comply with Daimler Allotory when it came to last year's sick leave. So in other words, in less than 4 months, they were able to provide the materials that they needed to all the relevant language populations. And I would like to understand why folks think that it should take longer in this area. I'd also say that we believe that Daimler Allotory should have been applied in the 1970s to this area. So folks have been waiting for a long time, and the idea that people need to wait longer is, again, something I'd like to ask. And the reason that was listed in the analysis for why it should take potentially 3 years is around an IT modernization project that is being undergone. I think we all know that there have been a number of IT projects that have been very challenged when it came to how long it takes. From my perspective, I wouldn't want to hang up language access in this area for that project to be done.
And you've not heard from the division or the department that they need 3 years?
I have not heard that. This is something that's being asked, I know, from the JPA. And then on the last issue about whether we should put a checkbox on the form, we have been in discussions with employers on this. I'm open to that. But we're also in discussions with the administration about whether we dictate that to them or whether this is something that they can do administratively. I hope it's the latter. And hopefully we'll get some progress in that within the next week or so.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Mitchell.
I was just going to say, I think globally,
the Donnelly Alatorre Act, while those two gentlemen were certainly visionary, even they, I don't think, imagined a California that is as diverse as it is today, 40 plus years later. And it was always designed to be the floor, not the ceiling. And so when state agencies suggest that it should take extra time, or, certainly based on the California we live in today, all of those computer systems on the front end of the design must include the various languages that are threshold languages in the state of California today. So I applaud you for pushing the envelope, because again, I just think it's important that it was perceived as the floor, not the ceiling, and we've got to go beyond, as opposed to still 40 years later trying to get state agencies to just kind of meet that entry-level standard. We've got to do better than that. Thank you for carrying the bill.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you so much. We do have a motion
Yes.
on your bill. If there's no more discussion, we'll go ahead and then, you want to put in the closing?
I respectfully ask for your aye vote and hope you can get to lunch soon.
Yeah. Actually, the person that's presenting at 12 should be paying for it. I'm just kidding. Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
The motion is due pass to appropriations. Mendoza?
Aye.
Mendoza, aye. Stone? Stone, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Great. Your bill has 5 votes. Congratulations.
Thank you, Senators.
Thank you. All right, next we'll have Assemblymember Daly. Please step forward.
Mr. Chair, I have two bills. One is real simple, AB 1513.
We'll start with that one if you would like.
Thank you. Thank you. AB 1513 comes from the Committee on Insurance in the Assembly. It repeals 3 obsolete sections of the Labor Code. Those code sections mandated studies and reports that have already been completed. I respectfully request your aye vote.
Okay. Any witnesses in support? Any witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, any questions from members?
I move the bill.
The bill has been moved. I support the bill. Another subject. Let me see. I know that this bill might change or not, and if it does, please keep us informed of
Absolutely.
How it transpires over
Absolutely.
the process. I would appreciate that. With that, Madam Secretary, we do have a motion. Please call the roll.
The motion is due pass. Mendoza?
Aye.
Mendoza, aye. Stone?
Aye.
Stone, aye. Jackson?
Aye.
Jackson, aye. Leno?
Aye.
Leno, aye. Mitchell? Mitchell, aye.
Your bill has 5 votes. It is out.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. To all the committee members, shall I proceed with the next bill?
Yeah, let's go ahead and begin. Do item 2, AB 219.
AB 219, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. This bill requires that all drivers of trucks delivering ready-mix concrete to public works projects be paid prevailing wage. Our state has long been committed to ensuring that men and women employed to work on public works projects are paid appropriately. Under current law, the prevailing wage applies to delivery of ready-mix concrete for public works projects only under specific circumstances. Number 1, when the product is delivered by a driver hired by the on-site general contractor or subcontractor, or when the product is manufactured at a dedicated plant, one that is established solely for the public works project. There's a loophole in the Labor Code because ready-mix drivers employed by manufacturers of the ready-mix do not receive their prevailing wage, despite the fact that they perform the exact same job as ready-mix drivers employed by contractors. The state recognizes ready-mix concrete delivery as skilled work and has determined a prevailing wage for this work based on region. There is no physical distinction between the work performed by drivers employed by contractors and drivers employed by manufacturers. The product and the skill levels are identical. AB 219 closes the loophole so that prevailing wage law is applied consistently to deliveries of ready-mix concrete, but does not expand prevailing wage to other material drivers. My bill includes liability protections for contractors who hire manufacturers of ready-mix cement for delivery to a public works project. It also specifies that the applicable wage rate for delivery is the prevailing wage rate for the county where the cement plant is located, not the rate that applies to the location of the public works project. This will help reduce the administrative burden for manufacturers, because I've heard that repeatedly, and I respect that concern that the manufacturers have. But I believe this will help reduce that burden for manufacturers whose drivers may be delivering ready-mix concrete to public works projects in multiple counties. With me today are representatives of the co-sponsors of the bill who will speak in support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, Cesar Diaz on behalf of the State Building Trades Council. This bill is about a fair application to the prevailing wage for certain workers that are currently exempted. These are workers that are performing the same tasks as other workers that are currently receiving the prevailing wage rate. So you could have a situation where two workers are actually pouring the concrete, driving the same trucks, doing the same type of work, and one worker is not covered by the prevailing wage and one is. So it's equal pay, equal work scenario in this situation, but the loophole excludes those particular workers. Ready-mix delivery is already covered by the state of California. The state of California has determined that this is skilled work. In fact, the DIR posts these rates on its website. They also ensure that there's an apprenticeable occupation, so there's apprenticeship programs that are state approved that train in this particular set of work. The bill is about uniformity. It does not open the door to all materials. Again, this is already covered because the prevailing wage and the ready mix is already determined to be a public works determination. It does not change any wage orders. It does not require any ready mix companies to come under all the subcontractor laws and has no impact on any offsite issues that may be brought up by the opposition. That being said, we have listened very carefully to the opposition's concerns. And as the Assembly member mentioned, we've addressed a lot of them by including in the bill a very specific statute for ready mix only, with a definition of ready mix to ensure that it does not apply to other materials. It has the subcontracting clause to protect contractors to ensure that when the ready mix companies are providing this cement, that they're paying the workers a prevailing wage so that the contractor or the entity that's hiring them isn't subject to all the penalties that may be brought about by a violation of the prevailing wage by the ready mix contractor. It streamlines the compliance requirements by ensuring that the prevailing wage rate applies for when the actual ready mix company is being sent, so basically the manufacturing facility. So in the scenario that may be brought up, that they may be visiting multiple counties, then they have different prevailing wage rates. That's basically what we're trying to address by saying that it's only one rate that they have to follow, and that's the rate where the plant is located. It defines the scope of work that the state of California already has in its determinations, and it further applies to only public works projects, and that's re-emphasized. So we believe we've done a lot of work to address a lot of the concerns. Certainly working with the Assembly member, we continue to listen to any other issues that may arise, and we'll work with the opposition to address their concerns. But this is an important bill. It's a fairness and application of prevailing wage. We urge your support.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and members, Barry Broad on behalf of the Teamsters. First of all, there's a lot of Teamsters here today, officers, members. I would ask that they stand up and wave. This is an important bill for our union. Let me not repeat what Mr. Diaz said or Assemblymember Daley, but I want to add a couple of additional things. We bent over backwards in this bill to address issues that were raised by the opposition, and we're now getting to the point in the process where they're objecting to the things that we have fixed and sort of saying, you fixed it and we don't like the fix because we kind of wouldn't have complained about that in the first place. So it's like you can't, we're trying to do the best we can for them, but fundamentally they oppose the bill. And instead of just saying, hey, we don't want to do this, period, they have it's kind of the nickel and dime scenario, and we've done everything we can do. This is the sort of bill, it's an expansion of the prevailing wage to new people. People that work right alongside doing the same thing as other people. These workers are part of the construction process. That's what's different and unique about this from any other material coming to the job site. You can It's not dumping a load of lumber or a bag of nails or whatever and leaving. They bring this commodity, which is perishable, and has to be incorporated immediately, and the driver participates in the incorporation process with the workers. They are part of it. They move the truck. They operate levers and equipment that moves the concrete and the rate of flow in conjunction with the construction workers. They are integral to the process. I had the employers in my office at the very beginning of this process, and I said, okay, do me a favor, just don't do Chicken Little here. Don't say the sky is falling when the sky is not falling. I get you don't want to do it, just say you don't want to do it. But we, of course, Chicken Little has made its appearance on this bill, as I kind of suspected it was. But I got to tell you, on that day in my office, some of them who opposed this bill said, oh yeah, you know, when it's a Caltrans freeway project and it's a dedicated batch plant, oh yeah, we pay the prevailing wage. We've been doing it for years. It's part of what we do. This is an expansion. It's not a very big expansion. You haven't heard from local government agencies saying this is going to change the cost of construction and make the world come to an end and it's giant and expensive, because it's not. It's really not going to alter it. It may alter it a few dollars per hour for a 2-hour delivery on an expensive commodity. It's a very minor change, but it's very important to the drivers. This is done in the state of Washington. It's been done for 40 years, this bill in the state of Washington. The state of Washington has built buildings over the course of the last 40 years. Seattle is a very modern city. The world has not come to an end in Washington, and if we do this bill here, I predict California will go on. So I urge an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Witnesses in support, please step forward.
Mr. Chair and members, Caitlin Vega for the California Labor Federation. We are also co-sponsors of this measure.
Great, thank you.
Mike West, District Council 16, Painters and Allied Trades, in support.
Great, thank you. Okay, seeing no more, we'll go ahead and proceed with opposition. Please step forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dave Ackerman, representing the Associated General Contractors. As Mr. Broad said, we had discussions with them shortly after the bill was introduced, and I felt it was incumbent upon us to go to them immediately to discuss the issues in the bill. I'm not Chicken Little. Our issues are serious about the bill. We talked with Mr. Broad about those, and he basically told me, he said, if we take amendments from you and you can't support the bill, and why should I take the amendments? And so I come to you today basically saying we have 3 or 4 major issues with the bill. First, AGC is the largest contractor association in the state. Our public works contractors are primarily union contractors. We negotiate master labor agreements with the carpenters, with the laborers, operating engineers, cement masons, iron workers, and the Teamsters. We have a master labor agreement with the Teamsters for on-site construction. So that gives you an idea that we do pay prevailing wage. We support the prevailing wage and always have and will continue to do so. We have concerns about the expansion of the prevailing wage into areas where it currently doesn't exist, and that's what this bill does. What the bill does first, I'll list 2 or 3 reasons. First, we're concerned that this bill does not, with all deference to my good friend Assemblyman Daley, this bill does not close a loophole, because a loophole does not exist. There's no confusion for general contractors of AGC as to how prevailing wage is paid. DIR has had multiple determinations concerning on-site, off-site construction, and has determined that in the instances that this bill is trying to cover, that those drivers are not covered by prevailing wage, because clearly, as Barry stated, this bill's an attempt to expand prevailing wage to those drivers. So there's no confusion or a loophole to be closed here. Secondly, we're concerned about the liability that then extends to the general contractor, and I'm speaking from the general contractor's perspective. We're responsible for the verification of certified payrolls. This would extend certified payroll requirements to ready-mix drivers that now deliver through purchase orders on site and are not considered contractors. The way the bill is currently amended, it will extend that interpretation to make them contractors per se, even though they would not require to be licensed by the Contractors Board. They still would be contractors for purposes of prevailing wage. That triggers additional liability issues to where DIR last year, I worked with many members of this committee, and I think you may remember, Mr. Leno, that part of the budget bill created a public works registration program by DIR to help their enforcement activities. If you are paid prevailing wage on a public work, you are required then to register with DIR as a contractor and pay a $300 annual fee. Currently, these ready-mix drivers and companies do not have to do that because they're not considered contractors. The way the bill has been amended, they will now be considered contractors for that purpose. If they can't register or do not register, then it's in violation of the contract, and it puts the general contractor in a liability situation on that. Cost implications are another. Mr. Broad minimized cost implications when the bill was heard in a slightly different format, because it also included asphalt in addition to concrete. When it was heard in Assembly Appropriations Committee, Caltrans estimated that the administrative costs on the bill would be nearly $1 million annually just to administer the certified payrolls and keep track of things. Their cost estimates on just maintenance alone at Caltrans then was $35 million cost for maintenance. They hadn't even gotten around to include what the cost would be in construction. So clearly there is a cost shift to it, and I'll tell you, we pour and use a lot of concrete on highway projects in California. Last is DIR enforcement. I believe DIR's enforcement issues are minimized in the analyses and the like. The DIR will have significant cost implications for the bill. I think they were estimated $125,000 in Assembly Appropriations Committee, and we feel they will far exceed that given the complexity of adding ready-mix drivers to the certified payrolls and having to submit those reports to the local agencies and to the contractor and to DIR for verification. So those are the main summaries of my comments, and appreciate that. That's why we have not been able to work out an accommodation with the author and the sponsors, and we ask for your no vote.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Brett Barrow at the United Contractors. We are comprised of union contractors. We do support the prevailing wage. However, we feel that this bill could cause some regulatory problems with implementation and compliance, and therefore we must oppose the bill. Thanks.
Go ahead and add on. We'll finish up with you right now.
I'll be quick. David Jones on behalf of the City of Lake Forest. We do have local government concerns about the expansion. We're concerned about asphalt, lumber, other expansion. We believe it will be a cost to local government, so we oppose the bill.
Jennifer Burr on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, also in opposition.
Julie Broyles on behalf of the Associated Builders and Contractors of California, also in opposition on the points that raised by Mr. Ackerman.
Mark Ragoza, Robertson's Ready Mix. We oppose this bill.
Kirk Blackburn on behalf of the California Construction Trucking Association, in opposition.
Martin Hansberger with Holiday Rock. We oppose this bill.
Brandon Bartlett representing North Pete Ready Mix, and we oppose this bill.
Ron Coburn with A&A Concrete. We oppose the bill.
Curtis Lovett from Outback Materials, former Teamster, business owner, small business owner in Fresno County. We oppose the bill.
Yeah, hello. I'm Meinert Zwagstra. I work with Robertson's Ready Mix as a driver for 26 years, and I oppose this bill.
Damian Galford, representing Superior Ready Mix, a family-run company established in 1958, roughly 700 well-paid employees and 500 trucks. We oppose this bill.